Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Pain to Power Leading with Love. I am your host, Maria, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting, and I am here in association with the iRant Network and Better Minds Interrupting. Very excited to bring you this new show called Pain to Power Leading with Love. And as we get into our show, and before I bring my special guest here, I want to share a quote that I was thinking about in this idea of why we are here learning about pain to power. And so it is that both the devil and the angelic spirits present us with objects of desire to awaken our power of choice. And this is a Rumi quote. Rumi is someone who is near and dear to my heart from my brown girl heritage. And I will say for me, this is why we are here today. This is why hopefully you are here today with me and on this journey with me, which is that we are all going to be faced with pain in our lives. What we do with that pain, whether we allow it to consume us or we allow it to help us to grow and heal and become something more and learn from the lessons, is what we are here to do. So hopefully you're going to join this community and help learn how to heal yourself and heal others and lead with love. So with that, I am super excited to have you meet my special guest, Isaiah Frizzelle from the Bird Brain podcast. He is an actor, a filmmaker, and he is taking mental health and inspiration and sharing his messages. So welcome, Isaiah.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. We've already chatted a little bit, and your messages are so powerful. You have so many people following you and learning from you, and it's great to have you here. How's your evening going?
So far, so good. Usual Sunday, wrapping up some work, and I've been looking forward to this. So making sure I had everything lined up, so I didn't have to worry about anything before this.
I love it. I love it. And I'm excited that you are carving out the time for me and all of our guests to learn a little bit more about you. So, with that, this is
Mhm.
Pain to Power. This is the show. And I'm just curious to know for you, what does pain to power mean?
Paying the power for me, I think it just means using your experiences. You don't wear your experiences; you kind of use them to your advantage, right? So pain of power is basically seeing your adversities as moments to just kind of persevere, or a moment of reflection, or a moment of healing always. But more than anything, it's seeing any moment of weakness as a moment of work and wisdom in the future, right? So
Mhm.
that's
I
how I
love
think about, pain and power.
Yeah, no. And for you, like how have those moments of weakness led you to persevere? What is your story in that process?
I think for me, it's just, as an artist, right? As a, person of color, you know, there's always a journey or something to learn and be aware of, whether it's yourself or just like your environment in general. There's always an opportunity for you to take a step back and look at, okay, what's mine and what's just circumstances, right? And I feel like for me, I always say there's no 2 years for me have been the same, right? No 2 years for me have been the same in terms of who I am, in terms of what I may be working through. Like there's always a different level of something, right? And I think, from the ground up, just how I was raised, I was raised by a single mom, law enforcement, and just watching her do what she does continually.
Mm.
That's kind of been I say my modality, or my first introduction into what it looks like to persevere, right? What it looks like to
Mm.
persevere. And I think it's
Mm.
just innately a part of who I am. So I'm more of a fighter in the sense of fighting through my experiences in moments of discomfort or moments of adversity. It's just like, okay, finding a way to use it to my advantage. And that's just kind of what life has always been for me. And to the point that now, any opportunity where I feel like there's a hang up or a moment of, question or pain,
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's in this? What's the information in this? And what is it that I need to work through or see? But also be realistic. It's like, oh, this experience, it sucks. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I'm I'm my own, right? I think the worst thing you can do is kind of invalidate your experiences to appear unaffected. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
for what? Right? For who are you trying to put on a show for? Like that quote of, don't let other people see you sweat. It's like sometimes you have to let people see you sweat. Let people be fully aware of how hard you're willing to work, whether they're around or not, whether they support you or not, whether they are, wishing on your downfall or not. Let people see you sweat. Let people see just exactly what you're capable of if they're present or not. Sometimes it's cool to let people see you sweat, and it's cool to let people see you persevere too. So I
And
don't necessarily.
important.
Uh huh.
Right? Like it's important to let people see that real part of you, right?
Yeah.
In this journey.
Yes. Yeah. It's. I mean, it's so. That's why I think discernment is important because I think we get fed two different ideals of what it looks like being a person that's just existing in the world, right? There's this whole component of don't let anybody see your cars, don't let anybody see this or whatever. And there's this whole idea of be authentic, be your authentic self. And when you are kind of confused between the two of what you need to be at what time, it's like just have discernment. What feels good for you? What feels right for you? Not what feels right for somebody else, not
Mm-hmm.
what is somebody else going to think about you or whatever the case may be, because a lot of times we're worried about what people think of us. And the truth of the matter is they don't think of us when it matters to be thought of. So whatever opinion you have in this moment based off of how I show up authentically, that's on you. That's none of my business. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and thank you. And I think like that, but there's a balance, right? You said like you have to find your in between. And so with that, I would ask
Mhm.
like you're here because you've experienced your own things, and we're going to talk a little bit more about you as we keep going today, but
Sure.
you have taken this idea of understanding pain and
Hmm.
helped others to heal from it. And with you, what the thing that really grabbed me, and I've talked to a lot of different people who talk about pain, who talk about power, who talk about healing and relationships particularly, but
Hmm.
your particular connection that drew me is that you talk about mental health. And so
Yes.
I'm curious to know for you, one, where did that even arrive from to bring you where you are? And then also what's the role it plays in the way that you deliver your message?
Okay, so I'll start with the mental health question. So for me, I realized that I've always been a curious kid, very curious, very much in thought about the what behind the why. Always asking questions, whether it's out loud or to myself. And when I studied in undergrad, before I even started my first fall semester in college, I was like, man, there's a couple of things that I'm considering. First, it was, being a medical examiner in forensics. Then I was like, I'd want to be a criminal profiler. And then I was like, I want to be a therapist. And that one stuck with me the most. So, on top of acting and everything else, psychology has always been something that I valued, right? Because just understanding how I move, what my experiences are, how someone else behaves, why the why behind the what, right? Always understanding a little bit past what you see. So when I finally decided on majors, I ended up double majoring in psychology as well as communications. And I always said, I want to help people, but in my way, right? I don't necessarily have the desire to necessarily be, in a weird way, be the forefront, right? Be this person that's like in the middle of the street, handing out things. It's like I want to help people in such a way that if I say something to you right now, this is something that you can apply not just today, but years, months in advance when you are in a moment of need, right?
Mm.
And as I went through my undergrad program and learned as much as I did about psychology, I started to learn more about myself, right? And I learned the importance of mental health. And then I became a certified fitness trainer, and I understood what the nuances were behind someone who exercises or doesn't, like how your mental health affects that as an actor, right? As an artist, how your mental health affects your performance, or just how your day to day affects how you show up in your
Yeah.
relationships, how you see yourself, how you feel, how you look. All of these things are affected by mental health. Mental health is very universal. So as I got older, I started to explore it even more. And then the podcast came along. Someone was like, you give good advice. And they're like, you should have a podcast. I was like, why would I have a podcast? So this is what the hell would I do with a podcast for what? And I finally leaned into it and I said, well, what would I talk about? I was like, well, how about you speak from your truth? And I was like, but what if I run out of things to say in a week? I won't have anything to talk about. And I started this podcast in 2018, the summer.
Mm.
And 4 years later, every week I have a new episode and it's about something regarding life and it doesn't expire. So, what I've come to know and understand about turning your pain into power is that, you know, you can be growing and healing all at the same time. And sometimes your story, your revelation, your experiences, your struggles are somebody else's opportunity to breathe and be seen, be heard, be felt, and feel like they are not alone.
Mm.
Uh, and it's a big task, and I don't even think I fully have it covered yet, but I do understand the responsibility and the gravity behind speaking on mental health and being about what you speak, right? Because
Mm.
as we see on social media, people could pull quotes from anywhere and recite them and not really fully grasp the experience behind that original quote or the truth behind it or the intention or the sincerity or the connection that's needed to be there for somebody to truly understand where this is coming from. So that's why for me it's like anything I speak on I know,
Mm.
whether I studied it or experienced it. It's like I'm not going to give you something I don't know about.
But that authenticity is really important, I think,
Mhm.
one, for people to, because there's so many people out there, like you said, right? Like we can literally Google the number of people who want to talk about mental health or healing or relationships, right? It's vast. But I think
Yes.
a lot of part of why I have this show is because
Mhm.
it's like, so how do you discern? How do you
Yes.
discern who really to listen to? And so your connection to mental health to me is
Yeah.
that discernment, because it's not just about how do you do better in relationships or heal yourself, but it's like, what do you need to understand? And I think you said it right, like it's the
Yes.
tools that people are going to take to draw on in those moments. Like as I said
Mhm.
in the intro, right, pain is going to happen. We're all going to
Correct.
go through it. We're all going to go through things. Where do we go with it? How do we grow from it? Right. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I do want to say first, thank you, salute to all of our watchers here and our Ranters Union family. And hopefully, I'm sure, Isaiah, you got some of your
Oh,
folks
yeah.
here too joining us. And I know we're going to be in the chat. I've seen some comments come up, but we're definitely going to engage with you, ask us questions, engage with us. Definitely. But so I got to ask, okay,
Mhm.
because for me, I was definitely thrown off by the name of your podcast. You have to tell
Sure.
me. It's called the Bird Brain Podcast. For those of you who don't
Yes.
know, we got a little bit of info on what it is, but so
Mhm.
tell me the background, like every name, and I will tell you, I know this because Brown Girl Interrupting was something I really thought about, right? The
Yeah.
title and name of who I am and who I present myself as is important. So who's the
Uh-huh.
Bird Brain Podcast? Like, what is that? What does that mean to you?
So, man, it has so many meanings and it just comes back to rising above everything. So, I got the name, the Bird Brain Podcast, from the idea of birds, how we see birds. Oftentimes, we see birds as kind of dense, right? And mindless and just not really having much of a brain beyond just walking around in a park or somewhere. But birds know how to migrate to better climate when they're in uncomfortable situations or climates. As humans, we don't do that. A lot of times as humans, we endure and we weigh ourselves down with experiences and people and places and jobs that we really shouldn't be a part of and that make us very unhealthy.
Mm.
And if we took a page from a bird's book, we'd learn to take flight or elevate ourselves or see things from a bird's eye view. So you can remove yourself from this experience so much so that you understand it more objectively and practically. So for me, in LA, whenever I was in a place of like deep thought and consideration of whatever life is, I would always see a hummingbird and it would fly in. I'd see it and it'd fly out. And I just took it as a meaning that everything is always going to be okay. Like hummingbirds became like an omen for me. Even on here, like the hummingbird has just always been a thing for me. And, the legendary bird, the phoenix,
Mm.
I've always lived by that. Always lived by, resurrection and burning brighter because of your experience, because of the flames, just always rising from the ashes. So the Bird Brain podcast is all about taking flight, rising above it all and creating that infinity. A hummingbird, when it flaps his wings, it flaps in a figure eight or it creates the infinity symbol.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
they also carry, I think, like 10 times their weight or something like that. It's something very miraculous about a hummingbird. So for me, that just reminds me that you are capable. There's so much more than what you think or what you
Mm.
may have been told you were capable of. And it's
Mm.
important for you sometimes to really rise above your situation, even if you can't do it physically, at least mentally or emotionally. See yourself in a higher position than what's going on right now.
Mm.
So, yeah, nothing too deep, but yeah, no,
Oh,
that's
not too deep at all, right? No, that's just surface level, right? Like nothing
very
deep at all.
surface.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, but that's profound, right? Like that's profound because it is taking something as simple as a bird, right? But you broke it down in like this really clear idea of the symbolism of I love that idea of migration because so much of healing is moving, right? Moving from the place of pain to another place, moving from the place that's causing your pain to another place, whatever that migration is, right? Moving from a mental state to another mental state, right? Like that
right.
migration can be so many different ways.
Mhm,
And that's beautiful. And I think like that's the thing though, what you said about people not being able to always see that they can rise above is the challenge in healing. That's what
yes,
I've always come across is that it's this feeling when you're in a moment of pain, it's
mhm,
really hard to see that there is a sunshine, that there is something better, that there is another place that you can get to. And listening to your podcast
mhm.
certainly helps guide that, I would say. And I will say for those of you listening, this podcast is helping guiding you do that too, right?
Yes,
And I did see my counterpart here, Better Minds Interrupting. We have spiritual healing on 9 o'clock on Better Minds Interrupting on YouTube. Yep, there you are. Peace and blessings, family, my
I love it.
co-host, and we are also moving you along in this journey. So there are many ways and many individuals for us to be on this with. But Isaiah, we're here with you today, and you are here with us. And
Yes.
so I want to know more about like so you talked there are particular messages that have particularly like resonated with you or even just really resonated with your audience.
What messages have resonated the most?
Yeah, so as I'm listening, there's some that really stuck out to me. I know, right? You talked about
Sure.
loyalty, and I think there was one on loyalty that really like it hit me hard, right? This
Yeah.
idea of who are we being loyal to when we're disloyal, when we show too much loyalty, right? Who are we being disloyal to? But for you and like
Mhm,
in your process, are there particular lessons that you've shared
mhm.
in that way that really like in a moment of your own life you've come back to and be like, oh damn, I said that, like that should I should remember that, I should have thought about that, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the truth, right? So this is me, I'm Brown Girl Interrupting, I'm gonna push the limits with you, okay? I'm
Yeah,
gonna take you
yeah,
out of my comfort zone.
yeah. Yes. Oh man, what's a message that is stuck out to me? One of my recent episodes, I talked about, are your relationships a garden or a grave? right?
Mm-hmm.
Can relationships help you grow, or are they slowly killing you? And I like that episode a lot because it it's interwoven with so many other kind of topics, boundaries being a big one, right? Um, self-acceptance, self-love, self-reflection, holding yourself accountable. So when you do all of these things, let's say you start working on your healing journey and you start um, being more affirmed in how you treat yourself and see yourself. And then you start looking at the relationships that you've held on to throughout the years. And sometimes it's even family, right?
Mm-hmm.
We oftentimes we think that our family, because they're family, there's a level of mistreatment, right? There's a level of doubt that they're allowed to pour into who we are. There is a level of uncertainty and lack of safety that may come from the relationships, and it could be friends that you've known forever, like these people that don't necessarily speak life into you but poison your garden, right? They're just weeds. And
Mm-hmm.
as you're trying to
Yeah.
grow, you are kind of cutting at these weeds, right? But you're not pulling from the root. So therefore, they just keep growing, right? And they start to overgrow in your garden. So who you are now is more of a struggle to just be at peace because you're constantly cutting at the weeds instead of pulling out the root. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, right? To have an uncomfortable conversation with this person, or to break up, or to remove this relationship from your life and say, hey, this isn't healthy for me, right?
Mm.
This isn't
Yeah.
healthy for me. And I don't like how it feels. And understanding that you don't owe it to anybody to be in a relationship where you are compromised. That's something that sometimes people have a hard time recognizing. It's like, why is this relationship so important to you for the sake of you saving face and not wanting to upset someone for how they're mishandling you, for how they're mistreating you, and for how
Mm.
they're not supporting you? Like, you rather exist in this dynamic that's stunting your growth, ruining your garden, than have an uncomfortable conversation, have a couple of uncomfortable experiences, but still be on the other side of it, where you can now look at this relationship in a past tense versus a current situation that you're still fighting through, right? And I'm not
Mm.
saying it's easy. Like, it's never easy, right? Having these discussions, these conversations, making these very hard choices is never easy. And it kills me when people are like, oh, yeah, it's easier said than done. It's like, I've never said it was easy. These are not easy
Yeah.
choices. This
Never
is your
easy.
life, right? This is your
Yeah.
actual life that you're making a choice from. And just like they've made choices for themselves, you are allowed to make choices for yourself too and decide, how am I feeling in this dynamic? If it doesn't feel good, then why am I still here? What do I lose from removing myself from an unhealthy situation? Right. And, I think as we get older, our relationships kind of change anyway. We have less time for our relationships. So it becomes very important to be mindful of who is in your space. And as you're trying to be a better person, it's like, who is helping me be that? Who am I helping be that? Right? Or are we just going in circles? So yeah, that was the biggest one for me. That episode stuck out to me a lot, and even recently, the whole love concept, the talk or the topic about love and what that looks like and what it means, understand the importance of loving yourself first. And you can still seek community. I'm one of those people. I don't subscribe to that whole idea of like, self-love is all you need. No, that's not true. That's not true at
Right.
all. But if you are not loving yourself properly, then any healthy love that comes your way, you will sabotage it. You will
And
not
you
know
will attract the unhealthy love, right? Like
how.
that's the other thing, right? The other side of that. And I think but that goes back to what you said about the garden of the grave, is that
Yes.
like self-love is what allows us to say, no, I'm not going to put up with this, whether it's with family or friends or relationships that are romantic, that self-love is the key to the boundaries, to the understanding that you don't have to be in a space where you are not valued or accepted or seen, right? And
Yeah.
But yet, as you said, it is difficult work. Self-love is difficult work because we are not accustomed to giving ourselves loves. It's not something we're trained to do, we are shown to do, we are taught to do, right? It takes a lot of
Right.
work, and you have to it's all of it's uncomfortable. Healing is an uncomfortable place.
Oh, it's ugly.
Um, but but I think like the thing is though, right? And you say this a lot, it's that you have to get uncomfortable, you have to get comfortable with the discomfort because
Correct.
that is your place of growth.
Yes. Yeah. That's where it exists. Is it's you know, some people find comfort in chaos, right? So it's like comfort is never the goal. Peace, I will say, is more of the goal than comfort. Uh,
Mm,
and the reason why I say that is because you can be in a room full of people that you know very well and still feel unsettled, right? You can be
mhm,
alone and feel very much at peace and fulfilled. So the goal is to always be at peace, never to be comfortable, but simply at peace. And sometimes, you know, getting to that point requires a lot of discomfort. And I think once you fully understand peace and you value it, one, you will take care of other people's peace, but you would also prioritize your own. Um,
mm.
you can tell, you can tell who is really about peace as much as they say they are because of how they treat you. Um, that's a reflection of how they take care of themselves in a lot of
So
ways.
say more about that.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Tell me a little bit more.
Which part? The peace
Like
or
how you said you can tell how someone else is at peace because the way they treat you. So what does that look like? How would others tell that someone else is in that place of
peace?
peace? Especially as you're thinking about relationships, because when
Yeah.
you're picking people, right? You want someone who's at peace. You don't you want someone who has that quality about them. So what is it that you're expecting or seeing from those who are at peace?
You know what? Typically for me, I think even in friendships or like even in business exchanges, I can usually tell by how there's certain things that come, and this is probably the psychology of it, but there's certain things that a person may say or how they talk about others may define what level of peace they're at. Because there are sometimes when you have a conversation with someone and they talk about their past, um, it's as if they're in the moment right now and it's something that they still haven't worked through, right? So
Mm,
if I am in exchange with a person who's not doing the work, then that means their lack of work is now going to filter into our relationship. Those
mm,
same things are going to come. They're going to bring whoever they had this problem with, they're going to bring it to our dinner table, right?
yeah.
Um, or how they respond to you not having or to them not having full access to you, or say you have a bunch of things going on, right? And they're like, well, is there anything that I could help with to take a load off your plate? If I'm capable of helping you, I will help you, right? It's the little things. How someone shows up to be in your life says a lot because either people show up to take or people just simply show up to lessen your load, right?
Mm,
One of
mm.
the amazing things my mom told me growing up was always put things back how you found them, or sometimes put things back and leave them better than how you found them. You know, and when it comes to people, the goal is to not be another person that somebody has to heal from. Granted, you know, we can have an experience with
Yes.
a person that ignites a trauma or something, but your overall goal is to not intentionally be another thing that somebody has to work through or heal from.
Mm, mm.
And you do
Yeah,
that, you know.
yeah. So, and it should be right. Add what can you add to someone, and add, and then also take off. Right, like that piece is really important. So I see we have a lot of friends in the chat here. Mr. Jones, oh, welcome, Mr. Jones. Good to see you. Self love. It helps to help love yourself in order to love others that come into your life. Yes, you
Mhm.
have to have that self-love. You being more humble and calmer and feels happy all the time definitely makes a big difference, that piece. And Tanya Frizzelle, yes, king and queen.
That's my
Thank you.
mom.
I was gonna say, is that your mom? So I've
That
heard about you, mom. Welcome, mom. It's nice to have you here and listening.
yeah.
he's an impressive young man. He's done some cool things. So we're excited to have you both here.
Thank you guys.
So definitely, and I think like so let me ask you, in this
Hmm.
journey of
Hmm.
everything, you mentioned a little bit about identity for yourself, but if we were to delve into that, what does who you are and your identity and how you what's important to you within that, how's that defined your way of even looking at healing, at pain, at love, like all of these things?
How is my identity defined in that, or
Like
vice versa?
how is it related, how is it connected to that for you personally?
Oh, wow. Well, I think for me personally, it's just all it embodies literally who I am. And I realize that as I get older, the importance of taking care of yourself, um, to be able to take care of other people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be um, in proximity of, it just can simply be how I show up, again, how I talk, what I create. These are all extended versions of me, right? Whether it's the podcast, whether it's my training, whether it's even TikTok, these conversations, it's all an extension of who Isaiah is and the work that I've done to become this person. And I think so this is something that I love doing, and I don't know why, but I do. So a lot of times people see me in public and they're like, "Oh, you played sports, or you did this, or you look like a linebacker or something like that." I'm like, "No, I didn't really play sports. I was in martial arts growing up." I'm like, that's about it. And they're like, "Wait, so you don't play sports?" I'm like, "No." It's like, "But I have 2 degrees though." And I'm like, "I wrote a book. Like, I'm an author,
Mm,
so it's like it's me having a way to deviate from certain stereotypes, as a person of color, person of my stature. It's like I can be other things than what somebody expects me to be just by existing. And I think that's so empowering, and I honor that so much. The reason why is because, again, people are going to have what to say about you one way or another, but your reputation speaks in rooms that you haven't even been in yet. And that's
mm,
all because of the work that you continue to do. That's all because of the people you decide to surround yourself with, or how you were raised, what you've learned from, what you've taken, what you put down. All of these things are a deciding factor in who you are and how you influence people around you, or just how you influence the world. So, as far as identity, the I identity is like I identify with the components of being very unique. Even if I want to downplay my uniqueness, it's like at the end of the day, I'm me. I'm me through and through, and I've never really tried to be anything else other than, because I don't know how. I don't know how to be something else, and it feels funny. It doesn't feel good for me.
right,
I
and that's self-love though, right? Self-love
Yeah,
is just that. It's that you love to be you in your idiosyncrasies, in your ups and downs and your negatives and positives, but that's it. We are who we are, and we have to love all those things about ourselves in order to
yes.
expect and hope that anybody else is going to love them about us too, right?
Yes. And it's not always easy, right? Because you have these moments of disappointment where you think that I'm not doing this thing, or I didn't do this right, or I did
Mhm.
this better, or I could have been better at this. And I think even parents sometimes, right? Where I feel like there's an opportunity. Now, granted, I'm not a parent, but I've had hands in helping to raise my brother, but also seeing how my mom did it. It's this moment of, am I doing these things right? But also understanding, how am I influencing others?
Mm, mm,
Um, and at the same time, being very forgiving of yourself. I think that's usually a hard thing that people have trouble with, is self-forgiveness, and what that actually looks like. It's like, no, I can't rest today. I got to do this. I didn't get this done. Or I was supposed to go to the gym today. I didn't do that. Or I was supposed to eat this. I didn't do that. I fell off my diet. I'm a failure. I'm this, I'm that. Literally, the dialogue that you have with yourself, the little kid in you that's always been looking for approval, safety, validation, protection, and honor, they are hearing those things,
mm,
right? So even if you don't have children, you are still self-parenting. And you have to be more
Oh,
mindful of how you talk to the little kid in you because they are always listening and they're just looking for you to say the right things. Always.
mm. That's really powerful because I think, right, that's what it comes down to, though, is that there's this little kid in us that didn't get something, that didn't feel something, and we are feeding that little child something in the words that we use and in the belief systems that we have, right?
Yes.
And I will say I am a parent. I have
There
four
you go.
children and and that, and it's funny when you said that, Isaiah. I was thinking of, you recently posted something on the imposter syndrome, right? And this
Yes.
idea of imposter syndrome, and I've had it come up in professional spaces before, and like even with this kind of stuff, right? Like, who am I to have a podcast? I'm just some
Right.
random lady, right? Like, what am I doing here, right? but
Right.
but but I think that it's interesting because when you said that, I was thinking, I think that there are parents who have imposter syndrome of themselves sometimes, right? Like
Yeah.
this idea of like, do I really know what I'm doing? There's no training manual, right? There's no,
Yeah.
it is different, and it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of trial and error, but that connection of, yeah, like we are, what we say, what we do is what they're picking up on constantly. And it does, it's a responsibility, but it's also like this thing that makes you feel like sometimes you're an imposter. Like, do I really know? Because if I don't really know myself and I haven't figured out myself, how am I teaching you how to do all this stuff, right? Um,
Yes.
and it comes up, right? Like it does. I
Yeah.
think, and I know we got some parents in the chat. You can chime in, but like it's the truth, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't know, you don't know, but going back to the child inside, I think
Yes.
knowing that you are cultivating that child inside of them
Mm-hmm.
should be hopefully one of those things that helps guide how you navigate that, what you say, the words you use, right?
Yes.
I am constantly thinking about that. I have a daughter who's 5, and so for me, I look at her and always think about, well, what kind of woman do I want
Mm.
her to be? What do
Yeah.
I want her to believe about being a woman and what that means? Like, I think even of what you just said, you talked about, like that we don't self forgive, we don't give ourselves kind of grace and forgiveness.
No.
um I
No.
don't know if you've noticed this, and I know you're a guy, but a lot of
Yes.
your audience is women, right? But
Yep.
women tend to be the ones who do that the most, is
Yep.
that lack of self forgiveness, that lack of grace, and we feel that we must do and be everything. And I've tried to be conscious about that with my daughter. I've really tried to be like intentionally tell her, you don't have to do everything for your brothers, right? Like, you
Right.
don't, it's okay to just want to be by yourself and love yourself and find peace in that aloneness, and
Yeah.
not always have to be with others and doing for others, because women are kind of given that message really early in life. And
Agreed.
it's a lot of undoing. And I think a lot of things you talk about is the undoing of all those messages of what it is to be
Yeah.
a woman.
Yes. It's funny because my podcast, the goal, it wasn't my intention to have a huge demographic of women. I was just like, yeah, everybody knows mental health. So everybody's just going to listen to it. And this is before, I think only within the last couple of years did I realize how much more women, like you said, are affected by the self worth, the imposter syndrome, all these things in contrast to men, because women are kind of taught that you're only as good as what you offer or are,
Mm,
how you offer of yourself.
right.
That's your identity, right?
Yeah.
um why community women typically have healthier community later in life than men do, because men are taught you are only as good as what you possess, right? So it's like
Mhm.
everything is about ownership, right? That's how men's worth is defined essentially. The beauty in how I was raised, um my mom, she probably doesn't know that I know this and I understand this, but for me, it's like seeing a woman in a very male dominant profession, very dangerous profession.
Mm.
Also, with my sister being the first female black belt in our karate school growing up, um, I was always surrounded by very strong women uh, that were very self sufficient. And being raised by a single parent, that means I learned to be my own person, right? Honor and respect the women in my life who take care of me, but also learn to be an honorable and respectful person by how I treat them and other
Mm.
people moving forward. Um, and that's, I think, the uniqueness about my experiences because, when I have talked to even, peers of mine or acquaintances of mine and how they talk about women sometimes, I'll check them on it. I don't hesitate to do that. I'm like, wait, um, I'm sorry, what?
Run that back again. Right. Yeah.
I'm not computing. And then I look at them and I look at the capacity or their ability to even have a conversation beyond just like the
Mm.
weather or sports. And I'm like, oh, okay. So my experience in general has always just been kind of unique because even amongst guys, I would feel like I'm wanting to have a deeper conversation than just this surface stuff, or about sports. It's like I don't even really watch sports. Like, so once you start talking about sports, you lose me. But that's me, right? There's nothing good or bad about it. It just is. So as I looked at the analytics of my podcast, even my TikTok, predominantly women. And then it finally clicked. I'm like, oh, this makes sense because women are typically responsible for the emotional um, space and capacity uh,
Mm.
for themselves, but also everybody else around them. And this makes so much sense. And that just wanted me to talk about this stuff even more, which is why, when I do have these topics and these episodes, I always bring it back to listen, you matter. Point blank. This is non negotiable. You matter. You matter outside of what you do for others because there's going to come a point in time where you may not have much to give. You may not have much to give. And you still have to see yourself as somebody who's worthy and deserving of love. The same amount of love that you're willing to give, right?
Mm.
Oftentimes there's this disconnect. It's like, oh, yeah, I'll give you my all. I'll give you my all. Don't worry about taking care of me. And it's like, what the hell for what? You know? And these
Mm.
people that you're taking care of constantly, they should want to value you in return. They should want to make sure that you're okay. That's the importance of, self-love is it's about being in exchanges where you know that you are also going to be taken care of, not in a quid pro quo kind of way, but you feel at peace. Like if I fall short, I know somebody has my back, even if how I'm talking to myself. I know that these people in my life are not going to allow me to talk bad about myself.
Mm.
When I'm around my friends and they start calling themselves words, I'm like, nope, you're not allowed to talk that mess around my friend. Like, don't talk about my best friend like that. It's important.
Yeah, and that's powerful though. And so Tanya, your mom says scholar and a gentleman. Yes, yes, scholar and a gentleman. Smart brother. And Ja Logic, our producer, smart brother
Thank
for
you.
sure, for sure. Look, that's why I've brought him here with us, right? Like Cassius Kelso. No, this man knows the truth. Peace, ranters. Peace,
Thank you.
Cassius. Welcome. And thank you for joining us and pulling up from the Ranters fam.
Yes.
So and so let me ask you, like in this process, right? So you haven't
Mhm.
really talked a lot about your own experiences, but what if for you personally, like I think sometimes when we go on healing journeys, what we discover
Mhm.
is we discover things that we're good at, right? But then
Sure.
we discover things that like, oh, I used to do that and that wasn't good, right? So
Yeah,
what are your things that you've discovered or something that you've discovered about yourself that surprised you and kind of was like it took you back a little bit because you weren't expecting to realize that about yourself?
I have a very high pain tolerance.
Okay, so say more.
Yes, so I have a very high pain tolerance in the sense of emotional capacity or resiliency to endure things,
Mhm.
past the point of sometimes it being healthy. So I will engage in relationships where I felt like I just got to be there no matter what. I'm loyal to you. Regardless of how you treat me and how you handle me, I'm still going to show up and I'm going to be present. I got your back no matter what. Why? Because that's a reflection of who I am. And you need to know that you have somebody in your corner no matter what.
Mm.
Very unhealthy. Very unhealthy. And there was this concept of learning to be more kind versus nice, right? Um,
Mm.
And I posted a video just 2 days ago. There's a difference between being nice and being kind. Niceness is based off of necessity. Kindness is based off of character. Niceness is about manipulating a situation so you can get what you need from it. Kindness is you being who you are, regardless of whether the circumstances benefit you or not, but also being kind to yourself, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. And sometimes people think being nice, um, it, it it favors them to be nice. But what happens is you build resentment, right? When you're nice, what happens is you get taken advantage of. What happens is you exist in relationships a lot longer than you should, all because you want to be seen as the nice person.
Mm.
Right? Sometimes means that I don't have to tolerate this, and I'm not going to tolerate this. This doesn't feel good for me, so I'm going to kindly remove myself from the situation. um, and that's just what it is, right? It's not my job to take care of your feelings at the expense of mine. So
Mm.
on my healing journey, I realized that I've often existed in relationships where I was more of a helper or a fixer, right? That fixer kind of mentality of like, oh man, I could help you out. I'm always going to be there to help you out. I always got your back. And still realizing that I've had to take care of my own wounds, right? I had to lick my own wounds or to make sure I have my own back.
Mm. Because
You
you're
know,
helping everybody else, no one's helping you.
the healer needs healing, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you said that because I was thinking someone recently said to me that I was so strong, and I was kind of like, you know what, I'm tired of it. Tired of being strong. The healer
Mm-hmm.
needs healing, right? Like you don't want to always be the one to hold everything up, and it is exhausting. I saw some great comments in here. It looked like Cassius had something to say. I don't know, Josh. We can put them up. He says, "Oh yeah, wow. I was just about to ask a question about something pertaining to this. So that's great that you said that,
Yeah.
and I love that distinction you made. Nice and kind. Those are
Yes.
so different. In like language is so key in the way that we process information, and I always think that we have to be so intentional with that, right? Like intentional about and Tanya says you were raised on that principle. That's a
Yes.
great thing, I would say. And it's an important thing because nice seems almost like on the surface level it's like it's nice, we're nice to get accolades back almost sometimes, right? Also, right,
Right.
niceness comes with like a quid pro quo niceness, right?
Yeah.
Whereas kindness is like this heartfelt, just, I'm genuinely just doing what I'm doing, right? This is my character. It is who I am. I have kindness and I'm going to show kindness to you and I'm going to show kindness to that guy I see on the street too, right? Like I'm just a kind person, right? That's my character. But I
Yes.
love that the added element that you said is that kindness does
Mm-hmm.
not mean that your kindness knows no bounds and boundaries, because
Correct.
boundaries are the key to maintaining that kindness and your peace at the same time.
Yes.
Right? Because like otherwise your kindness be tested quite a bit, right? Like
Listen,
and
it's
then you're no longer kind. There's
right.
no kind, there's no nice, it's just evil after that.
That's rough at that point because it's like, okay, I now have to my kindness needs insurance now, right? And I want to something that I love is understanding that a person that's truly kind doesn't have to tell you that they're kind. A nice
Mm,
person will try to convince you that they're a very nice person and that you could trust them, right?
yeah.
A kind person is not eager to gain your trust. A kind person is just eager to be present as best as they possibly can. A
Mm,
nice person is seeking, like you said, accolade, validation, approval, or sometimes they're kind of being intrusive, right? They want access to the parts of you that you may not be given to other people, and they want to have possession over that. So that's
mm,
what a nice person does. And sometimes, you know, when I say manipulation, sometimes people are like, oh, it feels gross. Manipulation is a gross word. But there are sometimes people who are nice because they are afraid, right? You are not in a safe environment, so you don't feel safe. So let me be nice because if I'm nice, if I fawn, then that will kind of reassure my safety, correct?
yeah.
But in typical situations, when we meet nice people and we come across kind people, there's a very big difference. And sometimes people do mistake kindness for weakness. But I think to myself all the time, I'm like, as harsh as this world is, you honestly think a, a kind person is that weak? especially since the kind people are usually the ones that people rely on, right? What
Yeah.
about that resilience makes you think that they're weak? Just because they're not, flipping over tables, yelling down your throat, ready to cut you off at the head? No, there's just not a need to always respond that way. And like you
Yeah.
said, there comes a point in time where I can kindly let you know that, hey, don't try me, right? I'm not the one that you think,
I'm not the one. Yes.
right? I'm not the one. Don't try me, because there can be potential where I show you why I am kind. Because even though I'm a kind person, I've had to learn to sustain my kindness
Mm,
based off a lot of unkind experiences. So I have experience, right? I have experience,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just important to kind of like paint that element of what it means to be kind. Kind just means, like you said, through and through, you just want to present yourself and you want to be present for other people. But being kind to yourself means that you will not continue to endure certain things that are uncomfortable or unhealthy for you for the sake of being approved by other people.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
So
kindness is.
important.
Yeah.
And Better Minds Interrupting says that is the beauty of being humble. Definitely,
Ooh,
right? And
yeah.
I think that that idea that kind people are taken for granted, and that people don't realize how much some people only respect violence least.
Yes.
He says, you know what though? I think some people only hear it too, right? So like you
Yes.
didn't hear me when I said it kindly, because
You didn't hear me.
I
Right.
told you very clearly, and all the kindness that I had inside me, how I was feeling and what I needed and what you were doing, right? But when I
Yes.
cut you off, or when I said exactly what I needed to say and it wasn't so nice anymore, now you heard it?
Different, there's been a change in weather now. So now
Right,
I'm not
right. The shift,
the
entire shift.
shift,
Be
right?
ready for it. So this is a
Yeah,
warning, fair warning to everyone. Kind people got that shift. They just hold it in because they know that it's not a necessity, right? But if you
correct.
have done someone wrong, I actually once read, um, I read somewhere something someone said that if you've ever done a right or wrong, your story will live in infamy.
Ooh,
So I said it, and
yeah,
it's true, right? And I will say I'm a blogger.
yes.
There are some folks whose stories are going to live in infamy in not understanding that kindness does not stay if you do not reciprocate that, right? That's the truth.
Right, right.
And appreciate it, right?
Yes, yes. It's
So we got it, but I've got one more comment from your mom here. Tanya says, "Never let anyone draw you into their negativity. Stay humble and a reflection of your true self." And that is so true, Tanya, because I think that all the times that I've gotten to that point, I have
mhm.
lost my peace. And my goal
Yes,
has been in my healing journey, and why I'm here talking about pain to power, is to get to peace, to not ever have to go there. So if I have boundaries, if we have boundaries, right? If we all have these boundaries, we can stay in kindness and in
yes.
peace rather than get to the point of that level of anger or having to show your violence, right? Through your
Well,
words. I mean, I would say I'm not a physically violent person for the most part. I'm mostly just violent words, but those words will
yeah,
touch you. They will
words
touch
cut.
you.
They're sharp. If you're sharp, words will cut. Absolutely.
Yes, they will, right? Sharp people
Yes.
have sharp words. And
Yeah.
so
It's, I think it's like, even if you look at, animals, like we go to a safari, go to a zoo, we see a wild animal, right? From a distance, is kind, is doing its thing. If you get close or you jeopardize its safety or its peace, it will change. And I think we have to understand that too. As far as humans, we are capable of that, as we should be, is protection, right? Me being humble does not mean I am a good doormat. Me having humility does not make me somebody that's easy to walk,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
I'm going to show you that I'm kind to myself too. And what that means is recognizing environments or circumstances where I'm not being taken care of. And I can still be humble, right? I can still have humility,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
I need to still protect myself too,
mhm.
right?
That is really, really important. And it's interesting when you said that, like I'm taken to this cultural connection for myself. I think that
Mhm.
that is something that I've unlearned in culturally. Humility was to literally lay down and just let people do what they do, right? And I've
Cool.
learned in my growth and in through life experiences that kind of humility actually is really detrimental to yourself, and you're
Yeah.
sacrificing yourself
Yeah.
to allow other people to have space, and that's not right either, right? So
Correct.
I know you are an author. I didn't even get
Yes.
to mention that, but you just published a book, and tell us a little
Yes.
bit about your book.
Oh
It's a
man.
very unique, interesting, um, uh, you know, genre. I don't know if it's even like a genre of its own almost.
Yeah, I don't know. It's called The Coloring Book, and it's about life experiences not being black and white. You know, the things we experience through life aren't black and white. Our experiences color who we are. So it's a hybrid between doing the adult work, right, but also taking care of your inner child, right?
Mm,
Because if we look at who we are just kids that got older. Not every kid that gets older is also maturing and growing up, right? Some adults that you see are still stuck in very childhood experiences. And they might not even be aware of that, but it's very much who they are. And they exist in these juvenile responses and experiences of who they were back then. They just had to get older. So this book is all about, um, doing the adult work, but taking care of your inner child. Like having a task. Like for example, there is a chapter in here about boundaries, and boundaries are not just about the other person. Boundaries are also for yourself, right? Do I adhere to my daily tasks? Do I say I'm going to do something and do it? Because that's how you build trust with yourself, right?
mm,
How do I talk to myself when nobody's looking, right? It's the whole thing of not saying anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to a 3-year-old. It's very important to understand that, because I don't care how old, how macho you are, there is still an element and very delicate part of who you are that's looking for love and peace and safety. Um, and once you understand that, you learn to start having a better relationship with yourself. Like, be the person that your little you can trust. If you're going to do something, you say you're going to do something, do it. And it can be a small task. Have an uncomfortable conversation, you know, allow yourself to fail, but also still be loving, right? Self love isn't about what you preach publicly, is what you whisper in private.
mm, yeah.
That's the thing. It's how do you love yourself when no one's looking? How do you love yourself when you're not being celebrated? How do you love yourself when you get 2 views on this post or this video?
Right.
How do you love yourself then? Because that's going to be the true test of if you love yourself for you, or if you only love yourself because somebody else is giving you the green light to love yourself.
Mm.
It's a
And
big difference.
it's a huge difference. And the power of that, right, is that if you don't if you require others to validate the love of yourself,
Yeah.
when you have those moments of pain and no one else is around, it is so much harder to get out of them. It is so much harder
Oof.
to heal. That
Yeah.
healing comes from the self love. So start it now before you get into these moments of pain, right? Like it just should be an ongoing process. So, yes,
Yeah.
and Dot Logic and Friends says bars.
Thank you.
Never mind interrupting. I love your concept, Isaiah. Right? It's an amazing concept. It's a really cool book. So get the coloring book because life isn't black and white. Check it out. You see it's on Barnes and Noble. Um,
Yes.
and definitely go and check out the book. Support him. Go to his YouTube channel. Tell us about all your other things going on, your ventures, so we know.
Oh man. Right now I am the podcast has been my baby. So I've been tending to that thing as it's getting older. And you can find the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. The YouTube I'll be getting back into. It's just a whole nother kind of monster, as when it comes to YouTube videos and everything like that.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
There's editing, there's so much that goes into producing content. So yeah, I've been back and forth. I'm gonna sit down and start on a second book. I don't know if it's gonna be mental health or fiction horror, because that's my other kind of baby. And that's actually what the podcast started out as, a hybrid between mental health and horror. Like I
Mm,
narrate short horror stories on the Night Owl. subchapter because I was like, this is something that I love too. So why can't I have both? It's my channel, so I'm going to do both. So I'll get back into the whole writing game and, acting. I'm an actor through and through. So one day you'll see me on TV. The other day you'll see me on a podcast. I was just featured in Voyage LA's magazine as top inspirational people or inspirational people to get to know. I was in there October.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
thank
Very
you.
cool.
This is, I think that was year 3. I was featured in their magazine. So it's kind of a humbling experience, but I was featured in their November or October. It's on my website. And beyond that, just literally just doing my thing. That's it. I'm always in motion with something. And the goal, I think, is to give my younger self opportunity to be who he is, but also give my younger self an opportunity to be proud of the person that he's becoming, aka me. So
And you got your mom and your back, supporting you all the way through. I love it. That's the first time we've had a mom on podcast here, so
oh
I love
yeah,
it.
that's
I
so funny.
appreciate it, Tanya. I appreciate you pulling up and being here with us. And I saw a lot of comments coming up there. Because you are
Thank
inspiring a lot of folks in the audience right now. Better Minds Interrupting says you can only control yourself, and once you let others be the way they are, you would know how to navigate their energy, whether positive or negative. So true, right?
that's the
Yes,
one.
yes.
Yes, it's
And Jose Ilagan says, be the person the little you can trust. Thank you for pulling up, Jose. Yes. And
yes,
yes, definitely, right? That little you is so
yes.
important.
Oh
Better
man,
Mind says, great show. Keep it up, Isaiah and Brown Girl. You both are the bomb. Keep shining and shed light throughout the universe. Yes, that's the energy. Thank you. And definitely, Isaiah. And
thank
Isaiah, I Ramp Network. That's Logic. He's our producer. And we got producers. So,
let's
YouTube is
go.
not, we got connections. We got producers. You now are part of this community. And thank you
Thank
so much to our audience for showing up, for being here. If you're catching us live, thank you for being here live. But if you're seeing us after the fact, we appreciate you following. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell. Make sure you subscribe to the Bird Brain podcast channel on YouTube, as well as go check out the website and all the information down there. And thank you. Thank you for your time. Before we head out, are there
you.
any final thoughts you have on the messages for your audience, for our audience, on all of this, on healing, on pain to power?
I think the best message I can give you is be patient, be persistent, be persevering, but most of all, see yourself as somebody that's always a work in progress, but you are allowed to take rest. You are allowed to value who you are in this moment versus trying to become a better person and hoping that they are going to be the thing that you value and appreciate. Like, value who you are now and let that be enough, because that is more than enough. That's it. That's it.
And that's so important. Value who you are now. It's more than enough.
Yes.
And so many of us are still working on that journey. I know. So, and it's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
And Tanya says he's the first person I call after having a rough day at work, actually during work as well. He's my serenity. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Tanya, I have 3 boys, so I know that having that is huge. And yes, go, and you see there's the YouTube to go to the Bird Brain podcast. Make sure you check it out. And so for all of us today, I would say thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging with us in the chat. And just remember that pain is going to happen, but it truly is about finding those moments, those tools that will help you to rise above, so that pain does not consume you, but rather it's an opportunity for your growth and lessons to be learned. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Isaiah. Thank you to Logic, to Better Minds, my co-producer, and please come back next week on Sunday. And Isaiah, I hope you're here with us too. I've got a really cool treat. Flex Matthews, I've got a musician who's coming to talk about his story of pain to power and
Let's
sharing
go.
a couple of his original pieces. So
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
It's a good show.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. And good night to all my friends. We'll see you back here Sunday at 9 o'clock with Brown Girl Interrupting.